A New Jersey judge made a life-changing decision in the case involving a woman suffering from anorexia and her parents. Have a look. What do you do when someone you love seems incapable of taking care of themselves? That very decision was determined by a New Jersey Superior Court judge who ruled a 20-year-old anorexic woman was incapable of making her own decisions. The woman asked the court for the right to manage her eating disorder on her own, but ultimately the judge gave her parents the power to begin force-feeding her in hopes of saving their daughter's life. The case comes on the heels of a similar trial the same judge presided over months ago. There, he gave an anorexic woman the right to refuse being force-fed. Sadly, she was found dead months later from complications of malnutrition and organ damage. The judgment to take away someone's physical rights is definitely not an easy one. But at some point, do we need to determine the biggest threat to a person is themselves? I think we should preface this conversation with anorexia has the highest death rate of any psychiatric illness. But legally speaking, we are constantly confronted with some very difficult decisions. What are your thoughts on this?
This is a tough one for me, Travis. You have this 20-year-old young woman who wants to make her own decisions about her health, but you have the parents who are so worried. They're watching their daughter. At some point, she only weighed 60 pounds. Yeah. So as parents, you can imagine how distressing that was. And parents do have the right to go into court and to seek guardianship over a child and even an adult if they believe that person is incapable of making decisions on their own. So I have to applaud the parents in this case for saving their daughter.
I agree.
I'm sure that this judge made this very difficult decision based on what the doctors were there testifying like a psychiatrist would do.
Yes. And I think
anorexia is a very serious psychiatric illness.
And of the mental health disorders, highest mortality rate, as Dr. Travis already said, about 10%. And I think from a personal experience, I'm a physician, my husband's a physician. We stood by and we watched my husband's sister die of anorexia at age 41. And the issue was competency, because anorexics are very bright, they're perfectionists, they're often very manipulative. And so this first young woman who was 30 and went before the judge and said, nope, you know, I want to determine my own right, and he bought into it, and then she died. And I think you can't live with that. When you can do something to prevent
compelling plea that I can make that competent decision
on my own.
Whereas in fact,
they can't.
Well,
because they're malnourished. So from a medical perspective, you're not getting those minerals, you're not getting those nutrients, you're not making competent decisions, even if you come across as lucid.
Well, the judge found in the case of this 20-year-old that she was delusional and that her judgment was impaired. And I think that was an important part in him making the decision, giving the parents guardianship over a 20-year-old, which wouldn't typically happen, and deciding that her parents should intervene and force feed her with the hopes that as she gains weight, and now she's gained 15 pounds, which is so amazing.
But I want to ask you, Areva, how this practically works. I'm trying to envision they go back home and the judge grants guardianship back to the parents even though she's of an adult age at 20.
Right.
Because couldn't she theoretically go back home with them and individually fight them off as they're trying to, you know, how does that, because it doesn't solve the family dynamic. I'm just really curious, because usually when you commit someone, you're committing them to potentially a psychiatric institution, formal treatment. This is a little different.
It is different, but in this case, that order from the court that grants the parents the right to use force feeding allows them to go to a hospital and have her involuntarily committed if they need
so it includes that ability to make that decision for her.
To get into a hospital and to start that medical treatment right away.
The severe case, 60 pounds, I mean, she was teetering to getting very close.
She was 60 pounds and found collapsed. And it's important to point out, in anorexia specifically, only 1 in 10 people afflicted by this even seeks treatment.
Well, I think we should applaud her family.
I agree. You know, in medicine, we have, if someone presents to the emergency department suicidal, in medicine, it is our duty to protect them from themselves.